wisdom, and it's all yours.
Question for you before I start off. Why are there rules? Why are there rules? Like, why is there that cell phone rule? Or earpods rule? What's that?
To break it.
What is it?
To break it.
I can't hear you.
To break it.
To break it?
Mhm.
Why are the rules to break it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting answer.
Oh.
So people don't get out of hand,
People don't get out of hand. Okay.
Control.
Control.
Because it's a privilege, not a right.
Privilege, not a right. Okay. Interesting answers. Let's talk about this. Let's say we take all the rules away.
chaos.
What would it be like? You say chaos? Crazy?
Purge.
What's that?
The Purge.
What does that mean?
Do you know that one movie?
It's like a movie.
No, tell me.
Like chaos.
Don't tell me the movie. Tell me what it'd be chaos.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What else? Anyone else?
Annoying.
Why?
I don't know, people just seem more annoying. More disrespectful.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? No wrong answer, guys. I'm just curious. Again, take all the rules away. All the laws, all the rules. You're saying chaos.
There'd be no foundation. There'd be no structure.
No foundation, no structure. Okay, what did you say in the back? What's that? It'd be fun. Why would it be fun? No laws. Do whatever you want to, correct? So I want you to think about, when you say fun, you can do whatever you want. That means you can do whatever you want, and so can other people, correct? That means they can do whatever they want to you.
So they can kill you.
Right. You're like, good go, okay? Anyone else? Okay, so I'll tell you why I'm talking about that in just a second. My name is Sergeant Todd Garrison. I work for the Iowa Department of Corrections in Mount Pleasant. I worked there for about 15 years. What my job is to keep bad guys inside prison. Make sense? So if you talk about the justice system in general, I noticed someone came that they were talking about the Des Moines County Correctional Center there. That's a jail. What's the difference between a jail and a prison?
A jail, you're there for a shorter time.
Exactly right. So you think about it like this, a jail, if you break a law in the city or in the state, when you break a law and you get arrested, you go to jail. Correct? If once you get convicted or found convicted of a crime, after you go to a judge and so on, go through that process, and you have to go to prison, that's a prison time. So prison is much longer. That's a place where you go after you're convicted of a crime. Does that make sense? Where jail is just a holding place before your conviction, or for your trial.
Or for a minor crime.
Could be for anything, right? For whatever reason that the officer decides to, that you're breaking a law, and that he holds you, then he can arrest you, then he can take you to jail. Does that make sense, guys? So that's the two differences. Part of what I do in my job is, again, I'm a sergeant. I am what's called in receiving and discharge. In other words, my job is anyone that comes new into the prison, I give them an orientation of what we expect from them to do, and then I let them go to their prospective cells. The other thing that I do is I'm on the CERT team. The CERT team, which is CERT. The CERT team is the equivalent of a SWAT team inside of a prison. So you guys know what a SWAT team is, right? CERT stands for Corrections Emergency Response Team. I am the CERT commander. I've been that way for about 10 years now. I am also a licensed firearms instructor for the state of Iowa, for ILEA, Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. I'm also a defensive tactics instructor for the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, and I'm also a licensed armorer for the state. So I do plenty of things. I get to travel around with my position throughout the state to the 9 institutions. Let me tell you about what happens when someone comes into prison. After they get convicted, they go to Iowa City. There's a prison in Iowa City. They go to that prison first where they're classified. They are classified into one of 3 classifications, which means maximum, medium, or minimum. And then after they get classified, within about 2 weeks, they get shipped off to one of those 9 prisons. Make sense? Let me ask you guys, what do you think prison life is like?
Not good. Terrible.
Not good, terrible. Why is it terrible?
You don't like get to have your freedom and stuff like that.
Say it louder.
You don't get to have like your freedom and stuff like that. And the food's nasty and stuff like that.
Who said the food is nasty?
The food, it's like
Easy.
school food.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
That's not true. School food's way better.
Jails.
Really?
The school food.
Yeah, school food's way better. You're exactly, what's your name?
Kylie.
Kylie. That's a perfect way of saying it. You said no freedom, right? Is that what you think of when you think of prison? No freedom?
Yeah.
If you think that way, you're exactly correct. When you get inside, guys, when you're convicted of a crime and you get sent to prison, you get stripped of all of your rights except for constitutional rights by the Constitution, the United States Constitution. One of those rights that you get stripped of is the right of privacy. Which means that if we suspect you of having something on your person, or there's something that we suspect you having on you, we could do a full strip search, which means you have to get completely naked and we have to search every ounce of you. That's part of my job duties if I suspect them having a weapon or drugs or something like that. So the right of privacy, we can go into their cell at any point and look through all of their stuff and look through all of their cell, including them. Question?
Is there like, for like, say it was like a female or something, or there's females that do that?
Correct. Female officers do that one. Exactly right. Yep. Good question. Same thing with pat downs. When you do pat downs, right? Female officers pat down female inmates, and male officers pat down male inmates. Yep. So, right of privacy is gone. All your other rights are stripped from you. Why does that happen? There's 2 reasons why that happened. Number 1, it goes back to the job of what I do. What I do inside of a prison is 2-tiered. Number 1, my job is to keep these people who are having difficulty in society, I keep them inside of a facility to keep them away from society, right? So if there's someone that likes to stab people, we don't exactly want them in society, so they get sentenced, they get convicted, and then they get sent to prison, and I keep them away from society. That's the first thing that I do, is the basic of corrections. Number 2, which is different, by the way, than a jail. A jail is just a holding place. Number 2 is I keep them safe. So I keep them safe from society. Then my number 2 spot is I keep them safe from themselves and from other inmates. And that second one, the first one's easy, because we put them behind the walls, they stay there, right? They're out of society. The second one can be very challenging. To keep them safe from themselves and then safe from other inmates can be very, very challenging. Make sense? Why do you think that's challenging?
Because there's so many.
Yeah, that's a good point. On any given shift, and I can speak for Mount Pleasant, I get to travel around to all the prisons throughout the state, but in Mount Pleasant in particular, there is roughly 25 officers on any given shift. So 25 officers that are running the institution, plus captains and sergeants. How many inmates do you think there is? There's about 1,100. So on a typical, what they call range, if I'm the officer on a range, it could be 1 officer per 90 inmates.
That's crazy.
90. what a typical life is like inside of a prison. Well, let me ask you guys, what do you think it's, besides it being not having freedom, what do you think life is like inside prison? Boring, absolutely. Anything else?
Very loud.
It can be loud, but that's one of our jobs, is to make it not loud. And if it's not loud, then we make it not be loud.
Probably like scary, cause like if like one inmate is out, then like they could attack another.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You're exactly right. When you think of someone being inside prison, what do you think of?
They're kind of going crazy.
Okay? Absolutely, it happens. But I'm guessing what you're thinking of is that you're inside of a cell. The cell door has bars, and it gets slid shut, and they're stayed inside. Correct? That is not what happens. That cell that they live in with that door is only shut and locked at night. Most of the time, what's called general population, or GP, what happens is that they're out of their cell and they're walking around. They go to 1 to 3 places. They can either go to their cell house, where there's a common area in that cell house where they can watch TV or play card games or whatever. They can go to the yard, or they can go to chow. It's one of those 3 places.
I just go to what? What's that?
Chow, or food. They get food. Make sense? So they really have free reign inside those areas to go and come as they
They
please.
don't really have like a schedule of like when they eat.
Sometimes a schedule when they eat, yes they do. They can't just go in the cafeteria and eat whenever they want to, right? But to the yard they can go, or to the cell house they can go anytime they want. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you can see, if there's 90 guys or ladies inside of this cell house,
Somebody's gonna have a problem with someone. 'Cause
it typically always happens, right? And it's up to me to take care of it, right? So inside of that prison cell, the only protection that I have is, besides my other officers, I use pepper spray. There's no guns that carried inside the facility unless something really bad happens, and then that would warrant that. Make sense? Part of my job on the CERT team is to stop anything that happens that's bad, or fight, or anything like that. Make sense? With that, guys, if you start doing bad inside prison, you start breaking prison rules, because there are plenty of prison rules. If you start breaking those rules, or breaking laws in general, what happens is that there is a small conviction inside the prison itself, where they have to see another judge, called administrative law judge. And if they're convicted of that, if they're found guilty of that, which is way easier to find guilty of inside prison, there's no presumption of innocence inside prison, actually, then they are put into a small cell, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're able to come out of that. It's called isolation, or administrative segregation. They're in that small cell, like I said, 24/7. They're allowed to come out 3 hours a week for shower and exercise, which means, yes, you only get shower 3 times a week and exercise 3 times a week. The size of this cell is probably, if you put these 2 tables together and block it off behind me, I would say it's that, maybe a little bit less.
what happens if somebody in there is like suicidal?
So if they are suicidal, they are forced to put into a cell like that. And it was because they get put on what's called SSIP watch, or suicide watch, where there's someone in front of their cell logging what they're doing every 15 minutes. There's also what's called a mental health, or MHO status, where they're also put into a cell and also watched same way. Make sense? Depending on what you did inside prison to put you in there, they can put you in there for a long period of time. I mentioned in the last class, there was an inmate that assaulted me. He got convicted of assault of an officer, and he got put into that room for 160 days. Crazy, isn't it? crazy. So, that's besides the prison culture that's inside prison. Prison culture is pretty brutal, right? There's a lot of gang activity, there's a lot of drug activity, there's a lot of mental health issues that goes on inside prison. So not a fun place, correct? Not exactly a place that you would want to aspire to be to. And maybe that's part of even why I wanted to come talk to you guys about this, is that I want to express this to you guys, that prison is no place for anyone, certainly no place for anyone in here. So I want to talk a little bit about the answers that were given about why there's rules, right? I like this one. You said control, right? So you think rules exist to control you, correct? So I'm going to try to switch your thinking today. Sounds good? Here's my assumption. My assertion to you is that rules do not control you. Rules actually set you free. For instance, if I leave here, get in my car, and I go 100 miles per hour down the highway, what's going to happen to me?
Get pulled over.
I'll get pulled over, and then I start getting stupid with the cop. I'm like, you didn't pull me over, there's no reason, I'm not hurting anyone, blah, blah, blah. I start getting attitude. What's going to happen? They're going to arrest me, right? How fair is that? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Why can't I go 100 miles per hour down the road? What's wrong with that?
Because you're putting other people in danger even though you didn't actually do it.
Could I put someone else in danger or myself in danger?
Yes.
What if I drink and do it at the same time?
That's bad.
Can I do that?
Even more so.
Even more so, correct? So is the cop being controlling, or is he trying to help other people? Okay, so that's interesting. So there's rules to help society or help people, correct? Is that why we have them? If we didn't have those rules, if those rules were chucked out the window like we talked about, full anarchy, it would be fun for about maybe 24 hours.
Because I feel like if, like how we worded it when he said control, because we all have our own free will. So if we were all under control, then we wouldn't have any.
Interesting. I'm going to come back to free will in just a second. Let me tell you about what happens when there's no rules at all, no anarchy. There's complete anarchy, okay? Because right now, there's a structure, correct? There's a structure with it. Here's what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you about this from personal experience. I used to live in South America. I lived there for about 3 years. And I lived in part of the world where structure was very minimal. Okay? This is what's going to happen. The moment that structure went away, that rules would go away, what do you think would happen to society?
They wouldn't know what to do.
Wouldn't know what to do. What else? Anyone else? I'll tell you what would happen. Well, first of all, let me tell you what not would happen. There would not be a huge party. I can tell you that much. This is what would happen. You guys ready? There would be someone or some people that would take control and be in power. That's what would happen. And it's usually the ones that are the strongest, have the most ability, have the most firepower, and force you to be subjugated to them. That's what would happen. I know that's what would happen because that's exactly how a security threat group or a gang happens inside prison. Right? That's what happens. So if anarchy really happened, guys, you would replace one structure with another one, and that structure would be brutal. And it would force you. So you talk about control now, that's actual control. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's go back to free will just for a second. The reason I'm talking about this absolutely is exactly what I'm talking about inside prison, guys. Because as soon as you break a law, or as soon as you break a rule, you give up your power. Let Let me show you for instance. Mr. Carper said something happened maybe last week or something with cell phones. You had freedom. And then you used your freedom, another word for freedom is agency. You use your agency maybe not so smart in a smart way, correct? So then what happened today? What happened to your power? You have less of it, don't you? Guys, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Rules are there to help you keep power. Make sense? You think anarchy would actually give you power when anarchy would actually enslave you. You guys tracking me? So the more rules you follow, the more power you keep. Prison is a perfect example of that. If you do not follow rules in society, you get arrested. You get convicted. Your power goes to the authorities. Your power goes to the judge. And they can do whatever they want to with you in reason, in position of the law, correct? You go to prison. You're inside prison. You have a certain amount of ability, a certain amount of freedom inside prison. If you start misusing that freedom, what happens? You lose more. Does that make sense? Until you get to a spot where you're in a cell and then you have zero power, seemingly. The reason I'm bringing all this up, guys, the reason I'm bringing it up and I'm trying to convince you guys to be law-abiding citizens is because the more, as you keep the laws of society, you're able to keep your power. Make sense? You guys see it? Inside prison, there's a third tier that we try to do. We try to rehabilitate prisoners. We try to make them better people. We try to go into their heads and try to make them see what makes them tick. Does that make sense? Why would we do that? And by the way, what I just taught you guys, I teach them. Why would we take the time and try to help them be better people?
That when,
Could be more productive?
so when they get out of prison, that they can be better people.
Great. When they get out of prison, how many do you guys think, how many people inside prison right now today, how many do you think are going to get out?
Like
Percentage-wise, how many do you think?
5-ish.
5% get out?
I mean, they might get out, but they'll most likely go back in.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. How many is going to get out inside prison right now? How many is going to get out?
probably 50%.
50%. Anyone else?
80.
80%.
Get out of prison.
Anyone else? Percentage of getting out of prison. Here it is. Ready? 97%. 97% of people incarcerated will at some point in their life get out. So if we're able to teach them and give them skills to help them be successful inside society, don't you think it's worth our time to try and help them?
Yeah.
Guys, the tools that I just taught you basically are the exact same tools that I teach them. Because here's the thing that I'm trying to teach them, is that all of you guys right now in this room have power, have ability. Okay. Does that make sense? They have ability. Even inside prison, they have ability. They can still make good decisions or bad decisions, correct? They can still use or misuse their agency, correct? Yeah. When they misuse it, remember what happens to them? They lose more. So let me tell you about this guy inside prison that I work with very closely. He is a lifer, which means he will never get out of prison. He was convicted in 1981 of first-degree murder. I worked with him very closely every single day. He is one of the nicest guys you'll ever talk to. Why? Because he's had since 1981 to completely own what he did and to change his thought process. His thought process at the time was not very constructive, correct? Killing people is not something we want to do. Right? Since that time, he has completely owned it. He's changed his thought process. And he understands and he uses his agency, the amount that he has now, even though he's convicted and imprisoned, he uses his agency to the best of his ability. In fact, I say this, I'll get to your comment in just a second. In fact, I say this, that this guy who's in prison for life is one of the freest people I know. Even more free than some of the people in society. Because he's able to use his mind, his mindset. Does that make sense? Comment?
If somebody like murders someone, is that automatic prison time, or like, how does that work?
So whatever that charge is, if it's murder, it depends on the degree of murder and the situation around it, right? Depends on the charge, it depends on what they're convicted of. If they're convicted of first-degree murder, the mandatory sentence in the state of Iowa is life in prison. First-degree murder means premeditated, which means that I really want to kill this person, I'm going to think about how to kill this person, and I have the means and the ability, and I go there with the intent to do it.
So
Make sense?
they kind of plan it out first?
Plan it out, exactly. Yep. That's pretty much automatic life in prison.
What section?
What's that?
What second degree?
Secondary murder is maybe more like a crime of passion, or you're in a situation and it was more, you did it out of rage, or maybe a domestic abuse went something extra and
Would
you end
that
up killing someone.
Would that be longer? Or, obviously not longer, but like, would that be life in prison too?
Not necessarily life in prison. There's someone I know in prison right now, he has a second-degree murder charge. He's serving 50 years. Yep. Make sense? Good questions. So, let me ask you again real quick about the phone thing. When someone says, when the school gives you a directive about a rule, there's a reason they're doing that, right? If you're on your phones, you can't learn, all those things. Make sense? And same thing with your earpods or whatever you got. They do that to try to help the situation and try to help you guys become better people and learn something. Make sense? It is not about control. In fact, the more structure you have in your life, the actual more freedom you have. Let's put it in another aspect. I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat a steady diet of McDonald's Big Macs. I'll eat about 3 every meal time with large fry. What's going to happen if I eat 3 Big Macs and large fries? I'll gain weight, correct?
Yeah.
As much as I would want to do that, maybe with those chicken Big Macs, those freaking things are amazing. As I want to do that, what's going to happen if I misuse that agency? Am I going to give away my power? You guys see it? You guys see what I'm talking about? It's the exact same thing with society laws or school rules, or maybe even a parental rule or law. Does that make sense? That structure is there to help you keep power, not take it. Unless you're under a dictator, that's different. Which I was when I lived in South America, so that worked out. Yeah.
If we have free will, then why did they make rules?
It's because the absence of rules is anarchy. And anarchy, like I already talked about, right, is not freedom, true freedom. Right? It's tyranny, where someone's going to come in and make rules that you don't want. That's why. Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Questions? Yep.
Why'd you get into this career?
So I got into the career because I tried to get hired on by different law enforcement agencies. Burlington Police Department was one of them. They decided not to hire me. I heard it was Officer Carper's fault. I don't know if that's true or not, but They decided not to hire me, and so I went through the corrections route instead, and I absolutely love it. As crazy as it sounds, I love being in corrections. I love dealing with very difficult people. I love trying to help them, try to better their lives as much as I can. It can be very rewarding. That's the reason I went into it, and I've stuck with it for about 15 years. Any other questions?
What are things you like about this career?
Things I like about the career, again, like with law enforcement in general, guys, most people don't think about law enforcement being around to help people. But I'm sure Mr. Carper can attest to this. You're able to help people. You're actually called a public servant. The police and corrections are there to serve the public. And that is absolutely what it is. And I love doing that. I like talking with you guys, being in this position. I like being able to provide something else to someone else. It can be very rewarding that way. Good. Any other questions?
How
Yep.
has it affected your?
Hold on 1 second here, back here.
How's it affected you and your family's lives?
So the nice thing about corrections, guys, is that when I am done with my 8 hours, roughly, I'm able to leave the prison. At the prison, I can go home, and I can enjoy my family. I'm married and have 4 children. My oldest one is 16. My 2 oldest go to Minneapolis, actually. They'll go here, and so it's good. The thing I need to check though is, like I said last class, is I need to make sure not have the same mentality that I have inside prison. I can't carry that home. Certainly not to my wife or my kids. That would not be very constructive. So I need to. The divorce rate in law enforcement in general actually is very high. I think for that reason alone, it can be a very stressful job. Just dealing with things that I dealt with like this last week can be extremely stressful. It can be stressful to me, and so I can carry that, and I don't want to give that stress to my family, so I have to keep that in check.
What's your advice for someone interested in this career?
My advice for somebody who wanted to pursue corrections or law enforcement is learn how to be pro-social, learn how to talk to people. It's so important, guys, and that's just not in corrections or law enforcement. In any career that you choose, learn how to communicate with people effectively. Learn how to be engaging with people. It's very important. What time does this one end?
12:20.
12:20. Perfect. So we got some time. Anybody have any questions about prison? You can mean anything you want to. Except the worst thing I've seen, I can't talk about that.
What's the second worst thing you've seen?
I have a different. Where's the weirdest place you found drugs?
And the worst place you can think of is where I found drugs. That's exactly where you think it is, on the person. You said the second one. I can't do the second one either, but I'll do A1. How's that?
A1.
Okay, I'll do A1. So I tried to mix these up a little bit. Okay, I'll give you one. Inside prison, we can't take guns in like I talked about, right? I can only use pepper spray. So the pepper spray that we carry is law enforcement grade pepper spray, which if you have pepper spray at home, if you've ever been sprayed with pepper spray, don't answer that quick.
I've smelled it.
Yeah, I know you have. If you smelled it, then you've got like a secondary exposure, right? But the pepper spray, if you think of the hottest pepper on the planet right now, what is it? Anyone know? It might be Carolina Reaper. I think it could be.
I've heard of this new one called the X one.
Yeah, I've heard maybe an X pepper too. Typically, those peppers range about 900,000 to 1,000,000 Scoville units. the pepper spray that we carry inside the prison registers 2.5 million Scoville units. If you think of it, bear spray measures about 3 million Scoville units. So, it's delightful when you get sprayed with it, right? So it's pretty hot. So this one instance in particular, there was a gentleman inside of an ISO cell, and he decided to do some stupid things inside that ISO cell. So we have to, remember, we have to protect them, correct? From themselves sometimes. So he refused to come up, refused handcuffs, because there's a procedure when someone comes in and comes out of an ISO cell. Part of that is being strip searched and cuffed and so on. And he refused to do any of that. So what we do is we create, the CERT team gets called, and we create what's called a stack, where we have about 4 or 5, sometimes 6 guys lined up. We put on, it looks like body armor. We have a shield. And what we do is we open that cell door and we go in and we force him to comply, okay? This one particular incident, there was a gentleman who was just not all there. And a typical practice that we do is we spray pepper spray inside the cell first, before we actually even go in, and in hopes that he'll comply then. So as I was about to, there's a food port in that cell door. I open the food port, I give him directives to come up to the food port to get handcuffed. He refused all his directives. Then I did say I was going to pepper spray him. We have a pepper spray can that looks like a fire extinguisher. It's like, yeah, I know it's a big thing, called MK9s. And so I go to spray inside there. What most people do, what would you do if you knew you were going to get sprayed with pepper spray? What do you think you'd do?
Cover your eyes.
Cover your eyes, cover your face. What else would you do? Surrender, yeah, for sure. What some people do is they take their mattress and they put their mattress up against the door so we can't spray in. And there's other ways around that. What this guy did was this. He opened his mouth and I sprayed it right. On purpose. So I sprayed his eyes, his mouth, everything. And guess what he did after that? Nothing. Didn't affect him at all. He didn't do a thing. In fact, he got up, he kind of took it out of his eyes, he went like this, and just stood there. Craziness.
What did you do?
Then we went and got him. He fought, we fought back, we got him down, we got him in cuffs. That was that. He was just ready for the fight, and he knew that pepper spray didn't affect him. Which there's a small percentage of people on the planet that pepper spray does not affect. You never know if it's going to be you or not. I am not one of those people. I would say maybe, 5% of the population that pepper spray does not affect. I mean, zero effectiveness. You just never know. It has nothing to do with complexion. It has nothing to do with who you are. It's just where your body is made up. And this guy took an MK9 in the mouth. Insane. Absolutely insane. Good. Any other questions? I'll talk about this one. Someone asked last class, are there some pretty dangerous people in there? And I would say this. There is a small percentage of the population inside prison that have absolutely no business being inside society. They absolutely deserve and need to be locked away because they are absolute true psychopaths. I know that they talk about what that is, but there are people on this planet, guys, I'm here to tell you, that are true psychopaths. They have no consciousness. In other words, all of you at one point in your life has felt bad about something, correct?
Yeah.
You know why that is?
Yeah.
Because you have a conscience, correct? These people, and they're a very small percentage of the population, these people would kill you and then sit on your body and eat a sandwich. There's nothing there.
So they have like no empathy for anyone.
Nothing.
That's sad.
Zero empathy. Yep. Yes, I have met one of these people, and it just feels like they are absolute true evil. 100%. Any other questions? One more thing I want to throw out there. I think it's the last class. I'll try to do it every class today, too. I would say about 99.9% of all convictions or people getting in trouble inside, the reason they go to prison is for one of two reasons. Either drugs or alcohol related. So I'm going to say it again. The reason why they're in prison has usually 99 out of 100 times has to do drugs and alcohol. Whether they committed the crime while they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or they did it for drugs or alcohol. The vast majority of them. So guys, if there's anything that I could try to help you out with today, is stay away from drugs as much as you possibly can. Again, you're thinking that you're going after a high, or you think you want to be around with your friends or whatever else. I'm here to tell you that is a fast track to a horrible life and prison. And I would also say, along with that, alcohol runs right along the same thing. This is a true story that happened to a guy. Could have been any one of you. This guy was 18 when this crime was committed, so he was convicted as an adult, tried as an adult and convicted as an adult. He was drunk. His buddy was drunk. They got into a fight. His buddy pulled a knife. His buddy's mom got in the fight to try to break it up. The mom got stabbed, and the mom died. And so this guy and his buddy are both in prison for 50 years. 50 years. Because they made a really dumb decision, and they were drunk on top of it. Does that make sense, guys? Just be careful. Just be careful. Drugs or alcohol, guys, there's nothing good comes from it. Not a thing. I've seen it over and over and over again. I decided years ago to never touch a drug. I still to this day have never touched a drug. Never even tried to smoke of anything. But not only that, I decided years ago to never drink not even a drop of alcohol. And I still don't. Again, that's just me. It's just personally. But again, I see that in the prison system. Drugs and alcohol are the main reasons they're in there by far. Any other questions?
I don't think you covered it. What's the recidivism?
Yeah, I didn't. Recidivism means how many times they come back to prison. So of the guys that get out of prison, what's the percentage of guys that get out of prison? Guys and gals? 97%. So that means 3% stay in prison for life, right? Of that 97%, how many come back to prison?
Probably 90%.
Yeah, about 2/3 come back. Right? And they keep on coming back. It's like a revolving door of them coming back to prison over and over again. Why do they keep on coming back to prison?
I feel like some people, they try to go to prison just because they know they can't be in society.
Interesting. I've got a story. You guys want to hear a story?
Yeah.
There was a kid, and I mean he was a kid. He was 18. And he was in that room. By the way, that room is called, they call it solitary confinement. We call it the hole. Right? He was in the hole. He got out of the hole, and he did something on purpose to go back in. Why do you think anyone would do that?
Because some people are just no, some people just they're just wired differently, I feel like, and they just can't be around people, and I feel like it's just better off if they're just kind of in their own world.
I can agree with part of that.
It's not that they can't be around people, but
But they choose not to be, right? Anyone else thoughts on why they wanted to go back into the hole?
maybe it makes them feel safer.
Possibly. And there is something called PC or protective custody.
Because they can't stand
Here's what he told me, ready? Because I asked him. I was like, why do you want to live in the hole? Guess what he said? You ready for this one? He said, because it's easy. It's easy. In other words, we force him to do everything. We feed him when 3 times a day, and all he has to do is lay there. He said, it's easy. And he said, I like easy.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Now, everyone likes to sleep. Everyone likes to take it easy sometimes, correct? But I tell you what, guys, as human beings, we're not designed that way. We are not designed that way. We're not. As human beings, we have to do something and help someone. Because if we don't, we end up coasting through life. And there's only one way to coast. How do you coast? Uphill or downhill? Downhill is not staying the same. You don't coast and stay the same. You coast downhill. And that kid coasted so far downhill, I don't want to do anything. He's like, it's easy. He's like, there's not even laws to break because there's nothing to do. I'm in a cell to do nothing. That's insanity to
What
me.
does he even think about? What is he?
Guys, do you think that's happy? Do you think doing nothing is happiness?
I mean, not to most humans.
You think it might be, right? But is it?
No.
No.
Like I said, it's for their person's respect.
I would disagree with that. Because I think as human beings, we're designed to want to be happy, correct? Are we all wanting to be happy in this room? Right? Well, how do you do that?
And not a change your mindset.
And do the things that you want to do. Like, don't pay anybody no mind. Cause like somebody's gonna have something to say like every day.
100%. I agree with you. Guys, and the way to do that is by following laws, trying to become better, helping other people. That's it. And you can't be sitting in a hole trying to become better and helping. That's not helping anyone. In fact, being in a hole doing nothing is one of the most selfish things I can think of.
Since he was doing nothing, was he like required to do any exercise since he was
Nope.
so did he like,
Is he still there?
No.
I was
Where
gonna
is
say,
he now?
Somewhere in the state of Iowa. He's
Oh,
out of
so he
prison.
got out.
He's out of prison. But I guarantee he's
How
going
is
to,
he doing
actually,
nothing?
I take that back. I just saw him come back in. I just noticed that he came back in. He didn't come from Mount Pleasant, but I noticed he came back. And he's got a kid. Think that kid needs him? See my point?
well,
100%. 100% is.
I
Yep.
mean, it kind of depends because if he had a kid, it depends on how old the kid is. And like,
It doesn't
yeah,
matter. It doesn't matter.
I feel like my thinking process is, like, what if the kid never grew up with that person in their life in the first place? Like, they know they have a dad, but they don't have a special attachment to him. So he could be perfectly fine without him. Yeah, he might be bummed out at some.
But in some ways, it's still like,
He wouldn't need him,
no.
but he might be bummed out later on in life when he grows up and he's like in high school and like other kids have dads.
Yeah.
My dad went to prison. I never met him, and I'm very happy he was never in my life. Horrible guy. I want nothing to do with him. I don't want to know him. I don't want to ever talk to him, and I'm happy he was gone before I ever got to meet him. So.
It would have been nice if he was, though, wasn't it? If he was at some point in your life. I know you don't think that now, but at some point in your life, guys, you're going to wish that someone like that was in there. If someone was
Just a father figure.
correct.
Yeah.
If someone was a father figure for that Matt, people need that, right?
Yeah, but I didn't need him. Like,
Right, you're right, 100%. Let me give you another something else, guys, too. Great comments, by the way, good stuff. Appreciate you being open and comment like that. There's something else, and we won't We won't admit this to ourselves, but it's absolutely true. People, including you guys, need and crave good structure. It's true. We need and crave good structure. Right? We want it, we need it. And the reason why we need it is because we want to better ourselves. We want to help us. We want to help someone else. And there's no better way of becoming better than helping someone else, right? 100%. And you can't do that if there's no structure, no rules, no society, this and that. Good discussion, guys. Really good. Any other comments, thoughts, questions?